It takes years to build a reputation, and only one morning for a clueless executive to destroy it all. I learned that the hard way on a rainy Tuesday morning when my phone lit up with a furious message from our largest stakeholder. I was already on my second cup of terrible breakroom coffee, trying to figure out how a multi-million-dollar logistics network had suddenly ground to a halt. For nearly a decade, I had been the invisible glue keeping this firm from falling apart under the weight of its own chaotic ambition. Our agency survived on a massive $95 million federal infrastructure contract with Vanguard Energy Partners, a notoriously difficult client that required flawless execution. Managing their account meant navigating endless government regulations, strict environmental compliance codes, and the kind of intense scrutiny that would make most veterans quit. I took pride in keeping the waters calm, never needing public recognition or a fancy corporate title on my desk. I just wanted my expertise to be respected, but corporate loyalty is a fragile illusion that vanishes the moment nepotism enters the room. The trouble started when the founder brought his daughter, Victoria, into the executive suite as the new vice president of operations. Her previous experience consisted of managing a boutique clothing store, yet she walked around the office acting like she invented corporate efficiency. Victoria had a dangerous combination of unearned authority and total ignorance, which always signals an impending disaster for the people actually doing the work. She started showing up to my private client briefings, offering ridiculous suggestions that left our contacts staring at her in stunned silence. During a particularly stressful afternoon, Victoria hovered near my desk to announce that she wanted to modernize my workflow by automating our entire communication system. When I explained that our federal clients required personalized compliance verification rather than generic digital forms, she merely brushed off my concerns with a patronizing smile. I kept my composure and took notes because arguing with the boss's daughter is a quick way to find yourself out of a job. I spent the rest of the week quietly fixing her administrative mistakes while ensuring our quarterly reports were submitted without a single error. The true betrayal caught me completely off guard when a mysterious calendar invitation appeared on my screen for an emergency meeting at the end of the day. Walking down that quiet hallway, the sudden heavy silence in the building made my stomach turn with an unmistakable sense of dread. I entered the conference room to find Victoria sitting at the head of the table alongside our human resources director, who looked completely miserable. Victoria did not even look up from her tablet before launching into a hollow speech about corporate restructuring and strategic alignment. She smiled casually while explaining that the company had decided to transition my responsibilities to her new strategy team to create a more agile operational framework. It was a corporate execution disguised as progress, and the sheer arrogance of her delivery left me momentarily speechless. The human resources director silently slid a termination agreement across the table, ensuring my severance was dependent on a strict confidentiality clause. Instead of losing my temper or begging for my position, I simply gathered my personal belongings and walked out of the building without saying a word. They expected me to cause a scene, but true power lies in knowing exactly what happens when the foundation of a building is suddenly removed. I sat in my car looking at the rainy city skyline, knowing that Victoria had just walked directly into a massive legal trap of her own making. Months earlier, during a stressful contract renewal, the client explicitly mandated that I remain the sole operational supervisor for the duration of the agreement. That continuity clause was legally binding, meaning my sudden termination without their written consent placed our entire company in immediate material breach. When I reached my kitchen, I opened my laptop and drafted a short, clinical email addressed directly to our internal legal counsel and the client's executive director. I attached the original signed amendment from April, highlighting the specific section that detailed the severe penalties for removing me from the account. It was not an act of anger, but rather a professional notification regarding a major compliance failure that could jeopardize their funding. I clicked the send button with a steady hand, knowing the first domino had just been tipped into motion. The next morning, the corporate office plunged into total chaos before the morning meetings could even begin. The chief executive officer opened his inbox to find a devastating message from Vanguard Energy Partners stating that all project funding was officially frozen. The client explained that the sudden removal of their trusted supervisor constituted a direct violation of their operational terms. Victoria was called into her father's office, where her confident facade quickly dissolved into frantic excuses about not reading the fine print of the contract she signed. By noon, the legal department was frantically searching through their digital archives, trying to find any loophole that could save the crumbling partnership. There was no backup plan because Victoria had assured everyone that her strategy team could easily absorb my daily responsibilities without any training. The client refused to answer their phone calls, and the weekly progress meeting was missed for the first time in 10 years. The panic spread through the executive floor like wildfire as managers realized the true cost of their short-sighted decision. An emergency board session was called that evening, and Victoria was officially barred from entering the room as directors demanded accountability for the disaster. The chief financial officer presented a grim slideshow detailing a projected $60 million revenue loss that could bankrupt the agency within the year. The board members turned their frustration toward the chief executive officer, openly questioning his decision to promote his inexperienced daughter over loyal personnel. It was a humiliating realization for a man who believed his family name could shield him from corporate reality. While the executives were arguing in the boardroom, I was sitting at a quiet cafe downtown, finalizing the paperwork for my new independent consulting firm. My phone began buzzing with desperate voicemail messages from Victoria, who was suddenly begging me to return to help them clarify the project details. Her arrogant tone was completely gone, replaced by the shaky voice of someone realizing their career was falling apart in real time. I ignored the calls and focused on the future, knowing my worth was no longer tied to their sinking ship. The final blow landed on Friday morning when Vanguard Energy Partners officially updated their vendor network, completely bypassing my former employer. They issued a formal statement announcing that all future operations would be handled exclusively through my new private advisory firm. Victoria stormed out of the building after being stripped of her authority, her expensive heels clicking loudly against the marble floor as staff members watched in silence. The chief executive officer was forced to announce his early retirement, leaving behind a ruined legacy built on nepotism and corporate greed. I never needed to burn the bridge because their own incompetence was enough to bring the entire structure crashing down around them. Today, my new office is quiet, successful, and filled with clients who truly appreciate the meticulous work required to keep an enterprise running smoothly. I learned that loyalty to a toxic company is a wasted virtue, and sometimes the best response to a betrayal is to simply let gravity do the work. True professionals do not need to shout their value when their results speak perfectly for themselves.